Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock. It's time for our Unlimited Potential huddle. I can see the faces have appeared, so I know the technology is working. So we're expecting 21 of us today on the huddle. Experience tells us we'll probably get less than that, but you never know. Some people might surprise us and turn up anyway. But we're not really too worried about numbers. I remember years ago we did a job at the University of Leicester. Me and my dad turned up to do a job. We were due to have 56 students in the room. One turned up. And they were students, you know, of course they were going to turn up. It was like a morning. And so students don't generally do mornings. And actually, interesting enough, we got to, my wife was there as well. It was the early days of the business. We got together and said, what are we going to do with this one guy? And my dad said, oh, I'll just coach him for an hour and then we'll go home. And that guy went away, changed his life as a result of the coaching, and emailed my dad 2 years later and said, I ditched my chemistry degree and went into 8mm black and white photography production, film production, and now have my own film development company. And so I've always, from that moment, have taken the fact that the numbers are irrelevant. The important thing is the learning. So welcome. You'll notice I'm not Lawrence, who normally hosts the huddles. If you've not done one before, he's generally our guy. Lawrence has done something to his eye and is in hospital. He's okay, I understand, but needs to have some treatment. Something has moved in his eye, and so obviously that I did try and persuade him, but that was more important than him coming on the huddle. So I can understand that, and I'm sure you won't be surprised. I was more than happy to host, so it's not really a problem. Just a couple of housekeeping points. If you're not talking, put yourself on mute. I can see most of you have done that already. The mute button's down on my screen, down the bottom on the left-hand side. It's like an old-fashioned microphone white symbol. If you click on that, it'll put a red line across it, and that means you are muted. There's also a chat facility, which is a little speech bubble. If you open that up, I really encourage people to chat on that. It's something I'd like to see more of us doing, just communicating whilst the conversation's going on. And it's a good way to answer or ask questions and allow us to chip in and speak. So if any questions do come up on there, I'll stop the speaker and we can bring them at a convenient time. So just before we do start, December the 19th is our next community huddle where we will be doing clean language. We've got Sarah Scarrett coming to talk to us from France. Although she is English, she's living in France. She's going to come and talk to us about clean language. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a pet subject of hers. I think it's something we all know something about, but no harm in having a refresher on it. Also, at the last huddle, we had Peter, who I can see is on the call, come to talk to us about supervision. As a result of that, there was a lot of interest. Hi, Peter. There was a lot of interest in supervision provision, and the tenders and bids that I'm now putting in for the business require us to have a supervision provision. And so I've been talking to Peter about offering a supervision solution for our coach pool. That's you guys, so those people that receive invites to huddles. We are looking, and we'll make the decision in December. So me and the program directors are getting together. We'll make a decision in December how we're going to move forward with it. But in January, we're looking to provide a regular supervision service to our associates. There are two forms that might well take. The first one will be a monthly sign up, join in, come along type setup. So you register. It's on a Zoom call like this. There are up to 6 delegates per session, so it's intimate and quality. And the idea being that you can have the supervision provided to you by Peter in a group manner regularly. So if you choose, you can come in once, you can come in every month, and we can be flexible about it. The other option, which I think we'll look at doing later on in the year, once we've started the ad hoc version off, is a more involved version where you sign up as a group and you do a set number of sessions. So Peter essentially takes a group, a module, a cohort or whatever, and you go through 4 weeks, 6 weeks or whatever it is, and you go as a supervision group. The difference between that is, as a group, Peter can accredit your supervision, whereas if you do it on an ad hoc basis, your CPT accreditation will come from Unlimited Potential. So Peter can use his Association of Executive Coaching Supervisors group to support that. If you come ad hoc, then you'll get a slightly different certificate. Each, though, will give you some element of supervision, and also continuous professional development. Two things which are really we've been pushing on for this year, and also Stuart's been working on how we improve that with our associates. So if you're interested in that supervision, either the ad hoc version or the more sustained one, I think there might be a contribution for the sustained group one. It won't be much, but we might ask for a contribution for that. Then please let me know. Either put it in the chat, say, yeah, I'm interested, or drop me an email, or Louise an email, or whoever, and just say, look, that sounds of interest to me. No commitment, but it would help for us to know numbers. What we don't want to do is find ourselves setting this up with Peter, and he sits there and, you know, as we know with Zoom calls and things like that, you make the arrangements and half the people turn up. So really keen to know if we can get that working. It's good for our associates, it's good for us, it's good for how we look to our stakeholders, and it makes us more professional. So they're all good things, and I'm hoping and sure that Peter will do a good job on developing people with his supervision skills. I think Peter's giving it a thumbs up, we like that. Okay. So today is what I'm calling the Program Director Special. I'm pleased to say Omar's with us. It is his first huddle. He is our one of our 3 program directors. So we've got Stuart, Steve, and Omar. And he's missed the huddles. He's been training in a way. So I'm pleased he's going to be here. So I'm going to ask him just to introduce himself in a second, just to say who he is, a little bit about his background so that you guys can get to know him and get to see him a little bit more. We're then going to ask Stuart to come in to do his second of 3 programs on the Embark tool and how we use it to develop, measure, assess the movement of organisational coaching cultures in organisations. Today he's going to concentrate on workshops, and then next time in the December the 19th huddle, we're going to be talking about research opportunities with this tool, which is something, again, you guys might be able to help us with in terms of moving that forward with some research support. I'm really excited about the Embark tool. It's a really good opportunity for us. Then after that, Steve's going to come in and give us a cool coaching tool that he's developed over the last 8 months or so called 10 Lives. It's going to be practical, somebody's going to get picked on, and then we're all going to break into groups if the technology works and discuss it ourselves. So I'm looking forward to that. Just another tool that if you see fit, then you can utilise. Before we do that, we've been doing some great stuff. And some of you won't realise program directors have been with us now for a year. So it was last December that we met for the first time. We set a massively challenging agenda, we went hugely strategic, came up with lots of brilliant ideas, and over the last 11 months, we've tried to tighten them into sending the right message and getting the message across. I'm pleased to say that by the time we meet in December again, we will actually have a very clear idea of where the business, where Unlimited Potential is going and what it's doing, and we will be in a position to present that to you guys. But at the top level of it, this is all about taking our leaders safely out of their comfort zone to the place where the magic happens. That is the strapline that we're using. And so hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm sharing here. This is our tool. This tool you will probably have seen on the net before. There is a version of this on there, and we've taken it and enhanced it. But it's all about this here, which is if you like, taking people out of the comfort zone, the place where they're happy, where they don't grow, where they feel comfortable, but they're also frustrated, where they're relaxed, but also unfulfilled. That place where it does feel okay, but we know growth doesn't occur. And using this arrow here that we've got, we intend to, in our training, in our coaching, in our organizational change programs, we want to, in that time, take those people out of their comfort zone through these phases and push them as far as we can. The key here is around doing it safely. The job is not to stress people out to the point where they can no longer function. It's very much about taking them safely out of their zone, asking questions they're not used to being asked, and comfortably bringing them back to a place, slowly bringing them back to a place where they feel comfortable. Hence the arrow here. So we take them out and we bring them back. Nothing worse than taking somebody out and then not bringing them back. So there'll be more on that model as we go along, and more on what the organisation has to offer, and more of our concise storyline, if you like, about how the business is moving forward in the next few months. I'm really excited about where the business is going. We're picking up great new work. Some of us are off to Dubai in January. I'm off to Edinburgh in December. So there's lots of things going on, and we want you guys to be involved in that as much as we can. So without further ado, let's start, as it is the Programme Director Special. Let's just start by introducing, or Omar introducing himself, just to say a little about him. So Omar, over to you.
So, am I off mute? Yes, I am. Good afternoon to you all, and apologies for not joining you sooner. As Tim had mentioned, I spend, I guess, half of my time here in the UK and the other half in the Middle East. And usually I'm either coaching, working with PwC Middle East and CIPD Middle East, delivering various bits of change work, training, facilitation. So that's what's kind of keeping me busy and keeping me away from the huddles. What am I been up to recently? I've just published a book called Leading Cats and Dogs in the Workplace, which I'm sure we'll share at some stage with you guys. And now just focusing on another 2-day program where I'm creating what's called the Fast Track HR Impact and Influence Blueprint. So really looking at them as HR professionals. And I guess what's really interesting for me, just going on the back of what Tim was sharing with you, is the whole being part, in coaching. And I like to kind of frame that in the context of transaction analysis and who are the leaders or the people that we coach, who are they being in the moment, from moment to moment. So I think, I'm excited and looking forward to using that tool to just help get people present to, what are they thinking that's creating their behaviors. So yeah, that's about it from me. I don't want to babble on. I want to let Stuart get on and get into the meat of this discussion.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Omar, and thanks for saying hello to everyone. And it's good to have you on the huddle. Okay, Stuart and his second of 3 elements of the Embark tool and how it works. So, Stuart, over to you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen, so you should be able to see the slides. Give me a quick nod if they catch up with you. Nod. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. So, as Tim mentioned, this is number 2 of 3, 1, 2, 3. Last time I talked about client presentations for the Embark Coaching Culture Diagnostic Tool. Next time I'll be talking about potential research options. The idea of doing 3 short and sharp presentations rather than doing it all in one, because obviously someone missed that community huddle, then they missed the whole thing. So just to kind of, cross-section across the 3, and hopefully the guys who can't make it this time can pick up on the number 3 or see recordings of 1 and number 2. So I'll just spend sort of 10 minutes, 10 slides or so just to talk about the workshop. So in terms of our workshop, it's billed as a 1-day workshop. I won't go through all of these, but you can start to see the objectives here. The real clue to the objectives is bullet points 2, 3, and 4. Although they're not numbered, are they? But you know what I mean by bullets 2.3 and 4, because we talk about the actual, you've just seen it on the previous slide from Tim, about knowing, doing, and being. So you can see number 2, for example, is around developing knowledge. Number 3 is more about creating opportunities to grow capability, which would be sort of a bit more in the kind of doing camp. And finally, again, nice add link from Omar as well about being, so support and recognizing ongoing coaching success. So the construct of the program itself, when we get to see Embark from me the last time, or if you've seen it for the first time this time, is essentially we actually follow the structure of Embark, the knowing, the doing, and being in terms of coaching, culture, diagnostic work as part of the objectives. The first bit, which I'll just give you a quick taste of at the front here, is around defining the organizational need for coaching. And then once we've done that, some really good conversation around that, quite provocative at times, and I'm going to sort of try and do a little bit of that with you just now. And then we go into kind of following the Embark tool, if you like, from left to right as we go across from knowing coaching, doing coaching, and being more natural. I would say, like anything, because
Stuart, you've accidentally muted yourself, Stuart. That happened last time, didn't it? There we go.
Do tell me if I don't spot it, but it does pop up on the screen. Basically, it's a bit like you turning up to a kind of movie an hour late. You jump in the seat, and then 10 minutes later, the babysitter rings and you have to leave. So do bear in mind, this is like a 10-minute little mini section of what you'd experience as an actual workshop. So let me just move it forward and we'll talk a bit more. So the one thing we do in terms of the first objectives, and I think it's a really important conversation for us to have as well. This is about aligning direction for individuals. And we talk about, well, is it around cults, cures, or culture? So we use the word coaching culture an awful lot. And often that's the reason people come in the room for these workshops, to develop coaching culture. Typically the need might be someone said, can you develop one of these coaching cultures? Can you move us forward in terms of coaching? Might not always use that language, but we want to challenge that from the start. But we don't do it straight away because it's quite provocative, quite disruptive. But it's certainly something we want to do early doors, is to really check the direction of travel. Is why are people in the room for this workshop? Is it really about culture? Is it even really about coaching? And actually those two things might not always go together. So we talk about, for example, quite playfully, this little section here, which I'll take you through. We talk, is it okay for coaching to be a cult? Is coaching a cure? And is coaching a culture? And what we're going to do here is just ask the group, if it was a live group, we just say, well, which of these three questions you can give it a yes, a no, or a maybe, and we can just get some good discussion going around the language that we use. So yes, no, or maybe. Is it okay for coaching to be a cult? Obviously within an organization. The word cult is great as well, because that really can get some stereotypes and stigmas out there as well. Is coaching a cure? Yes, no, or maybe. And is coaching a culture? Yes, no, or maybe. And what I kind of playfully do often is I ask people just to use the yes, no, and maybe just once. So if you were looking at this now and you're casting your votes like you will do in a few weeks' time at the general election, which one of them gets a yes? Which answer is more likely to be more of your yes vote? Where does your no vote go? And where are you going to be on the fence? Where's your middle vote going? And we're just going to play that through as well, just to be a bit more provocative. So we talk about being a cult. So here you can see that I've taken us down to the Temple Bar in Dublin's Fair City to think about the underground network of drinking and traditional music. And we use that kind of, is it a cult kind of metaphor there? When we talk about cure, we talk about what is in coaching. You know, what is in the, if you could bottle coaching, what would it be? So you got things here that we actually will work through in the workshops. So identity of coaching, and you talk about identity of mentoring. Let's go back on. And then we talk about questioning. We talk about listening, the usual kind of suspects there. Now I'll replay these in the seconds we're going through, because the other part we want to look at is around culture. So then we're asking the question, well, is it around culture? And essentially what we want to do with this kind of a piece is just think about these three areas and think about, well, which ones are most accurate? So what we will say is actually, let's just go back a little bit. Actually, it's okay if coaching is a cult. Be careful, because the word culture has the word culting it. I haven't just picked up that kind of provocative word for any particular reason. And the reason we mention here, this is okay for your coaching exploits to be a little bit underground. So it's a bit like when you walk in this bar, it's not advertised, but there'll be someone or something playing a bit of music, something happened, it's kind of a gathering, it's not structured, it's not formal, there's no time period to it, and basically, you know what the currency here is. The people who are playing the trad music, they're getting paid in the black stuff in Guinness. Now, the idea being, if you have coaching somewhere with someone or some team with your organization, that is absolutely wonderful. Why it's happened, we don't know necessarily. Might just be a manager's disposition towards coaching, the team, the type of work that they do. But what we start to do now is encourage people in the workshop, think, well, how can you harness and leverage this energy for coaching, this underground cult that you might not even know about, but you have to actually go and find out. But the big thing here, this is the yes answer. This is fine if coaching is a cult within the organization, but you've got to think about how can you sensitively, appropriately, naturally harness this good work, this good energy, without going there and destroying it. So for example, then this one's kind of a nod to going up north to where Steve's from, a place called Scotland. In Scotland, the Stories Board actually tried to kind of formalize and sponsor and monitor traditional music in pub settings. And actually what they realized, they couldn't control that kind of energy. It was quite volatile. People just came together for the love of music, the love of entertainment, and it just didn't work. So if you have got a cult for coaching in your organization, great, but just think sensitively, how can you harness and leverage that? So that's the kind of provocation, I suppose, on the word cult. Then we go into cure, and now you've seen we've got the two words culture. Now, the big thing here we talk about really is, yes, coaching can be a cure for organizations, for individuals as well. Great example that Tim talked about there with a chap who went from chemistry to photography in a couple of years. But it needs some certain ingredients in the bottle. So whilst it might be a little bit of bad news for people on the workshop, you know, the kind of question is, yes, coaching can bring value to an organization, a team, and an individual, but you need to unmute myself.
Weird.
And then, so we talk about here, I mean, the one that I'm really passionate about, so much so I wrote a book about it, is right down the bottom. If you've got coachability, if you've got people who are coachable, which is part of the Embark diagnostic, then yes, it could be a cure. ACE, by the way, stands for actions, cognitions, emotions. So if you've got individuals up for speaking and listening around actions, what they can do physically, you know, what they think about something and how they feel, as well as making observations, listening, all the usual good stuff, then yes, coaching could be a cure. But it's a little bit of a maybe sign, really, because you might not have all these in place and you might have to work with these. Then number 3, we talk about the culture coming together now. The two words come together. And if this was a kind of a hard part to land in the workshop, now bearing in mind you've joined the movie and you're about to leave because the babysitter's called you, this tends to land sort of just before lunch, not to spoil lunch, but we do really want to challenge that word coaching culture, because actually what we found, sometimes it's not an accurate direction of travel for people. Many different reasons for that. It's just a word we want to use with caution. It's probably a words that we use mainly, and this is only a kind of informal view that I've got, due to alliteration, because we talk about coaching culture, 2 C's, which is great. And we get brought in all the time to talk about coaching culture, which is great. We've got to give it some kind of language. But essentially, a lot of my work personally has been in leadership development, and the clue's in the name. Nobody said, can you come in and develop a leadership culture? Because it just doesn't roll off the tongue in the same way that coaching culture does. So we just got to be a bit careful that actually what we are working towards is the right thing. And cultures obviously can exist on a national culture scale, organizational culture. This image, by the way, is when our friends in the US basically wanted to sanitize the wilderness. They went in with their train tracks and they drove out the wolves and everything else. And actually, if you do too much change to culture, again, you damage the infrastructure, you damage the ecosystem in such a way that sometimes it's been quite irreversible. So just as an example, a playful session to think about, well, what are you aiming for? We've got these words coaching, we've got these words culture. What do they really mean? Is it accurate for you and your organization? Yes, no, or maybe. And I haven't really always got the answers in terms of what we should be aiming for. I think growth cultures get talked about quite a lot as well, which I think could be a suitable fit here. Performance cultures, those kind of things. But just to kind of really challenge the language that we're using. And it's not particularly comfortable for me because I'd much rather call it coaching culture and just march on quite happily. But we do have to address them, I think, as we're going forward. So that's about mid-morning. We do other things as well when we kind of debrief this. So remember, you're not really seeing the full debrief here. We just wants to unmute me every time. We talk about coachability in a bit more detail because that was one of the big features there. We talk about what cultures are and what cultures aren't. And there we introduced 27 different factors from some research. And that goes to show that actually, if you're developing culture, it is really complex, diverse, and rich. So you've got to be really careful and deliberate that you are going into that space. We look at the work of Shine and Johnson, not just to use our own work there as well. And then we look at different definitions of culture. So really by the end of it, we've had some kind of stimulation in a very, a real coaching style about what is it we mean by coaching culture. And we even would go back even further back up a little bit, reverse engineering to coaching itself. I heard someone say the other day, the reason we don't understand what coaching cultures are is because we don't actually understand what coaching is in the first place, which is really worrying because actually it's the culture piece, as you can see from the last bit, that I think needs to be on our agenda. And of course, when you're in a workshop environment, you get different people in different rooms from the people who are working with coaching them. Some people are perhaps less experienced. In approaching Embark, and there's only a couple more slides and I'll jump off stage and it'll be Steve's turn. We also want to think about the art and the science, or the logical and the intuitive approach to culture change. And this, I've just done it now. We will talk about culture change throughout the rest of the workshop, even though we've challenged that language going through. And just to think, yes, particularly in a Western corporate environment, we talk about the science, the logical approach to developing culture, but we also need to privilege, in inverted commas, the art and the intuitive approach as well. So really in terms of the logical stuff, which we'll know about, which is time and budget and plans and release dates and training, those kind of things, which can be logically planned out, where you start from the bottom up, but also think from the top down. And the reason why this is a complete dovetail with Embark, because Embark, when you look at it, privileges conversations and looking at coaching at a more senior level in an organization, as well as more, employee-led as well. So we've got this kind of top-down, up-down kind of approach, because Embark is not a linear approach. Some of the work that Tim and I looked at way back was like, you do your 1 to 7, and you got to get from number 1 to 2 to 3, like a gated approach. Embark is much more dynamic. So we do really want to privilege this kind of approach. And this is great because a lot of people will come in with their own preferences, but they also need to develop their priorities as well around culture change. And then a nice metaphor, which we often introduce, is Embark itself it's like a map, but it's not necessarily the compass. So we could all grab this map of culture change. And actually, Tim and I have used it for different exploits in terms of beyond the world of coaching as well. So we can grab this map, this tube map of London, if you like. But the big difference for people in the workshop, which we really want to get across, whilst it might be a map, it's certainly not a compass. And by that, we mean when we jump, going back, trying to unmute myself. By that, what we mean is if we jump on the tube, we're all going to go in different directions because we're all headed in different places. So we can privilege all these different directions spinning around, all these different true north, south, east, or west within a workshop environment. But it's really important to have that map, that structure, the 9 boxes of dimensions that we have. And that works really, really well. We can still have a good conversation. We can work with different people on the day. I can sit next to someone else and say, I can see where you are on your map, albeit I appreciate you headed in a different direction to where I'm going. So a really nice metaphor for the actual workshop and a metaphor for change as well. So that was our kind of call to action, if you like, is in the middle section here. Last time I asked you about, what would you adopt and adapt from the presentation if you're able to make it, and also post on social media, which we'll send out the slides, and they're actually the next slide again, the same posts on social media. This time after today's session, we will send out an ebook, which we put together, which is 37 pages short. And just to give that a read, some or all of it in your own time. Clearly, we'd love it if you could share this with other people. And the idea of these sessions is to try and get you a bit more up to speed around Embark, to the point that you can actually mention it, share it with colleagues, friends and loved ones, maybe, who knows, but certainly in a client-facing situation as well. So this time it's the ebook that we will send out after today's session, and you can take that forward into your own conversations. Bear in mind, this is it's a 3 of 3, so you don't need to necessarily hit the go button yet, because when I come back in December, I'll talk a bit more about, you can see the diagnostic link there. We'll release that to you, although you could grab it now if you wanted, and how you might be able to share that and set up a client presentation. So the babysitter's called. That was your 10 minutes or so. You can drift out of the auditorium now. I'm sorry, you're going to have to not know what the end of the film looked like. I will just mention that when you see this, these are the social media links as well, if you want to take those going forward, same as last time. And also, if you're keen to post something, and kind of to make it easy for you, I've set up some posters there that you can stick on the superhighway of Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, etc. My work here is done. I'll take any quick questions, but I'm conscious of time and just remembering this is a 3-parter. So really the best time to have the questions might be more so when we get to session number 3. Any questions out there? I can't see the chat, Tim, so do feel free.
There's a couple of things on here. First of all, Janet's having a weak signal because her BT cabinet is full of water. So I'm assuming Janet's in Yorkshire and is probably suffering. Janet, thank you for joining us in the adversity of your flood. And I hope things work out well for you. Peter Welch talks about, or just literally asks the question, how about toxic cultures? Peter, do you want to just elaborate on that if you're there? You need to unmute. I can unmute you. Can I? Yeah, there you go.
That's all right. I've done it. Yeah, I guess it's just something I'm sure we all come across or have come across when we're trying to do our great coaching work. It's that if you're working in how people recognize a toxic culture, where really there's not a lot of positive intent, but quite a lot of blocking and possibly leading towards bullying and ethical issues arising. And I've seen that in an organization I set up with some inner coaching culture. And it really does get in the way, and it undermines everything that all the good people are trying to do. And I'm just sort of interested in, when you're talking with an organization, whether you use that word, I don't know, but to trawl for how they perceive the positives of the culture, where they do want to go forward and empower people with coaching, but also what they see as the blockers and the negative aspects that will fight it. Because all the good work you do can be undermined by the toxicity of possibly senior management. So I was just thinking of including it perhaps as not a slide point, but just to ask the question, because I'm sure there will be elements of that in any culture.
Yeah, probably quick response to that. First of all, perhaps you saw it in the presentation, although it was pretty speedy, and it's a strange place to come from. And in fact, we don't want to promise too much to clients, but the idea being this might not be a cure. And certainly, if it's a toxic culture, that's a bigger thing. And we've probably all been in situations, maybe you're alluding to it there, where this coach or coaching or this training is going to come along and fix stuff, and actually that's unlikely in its own right. And that's why you just want to be careful with that word culture, because you think culture is all encompassing. And actually, if we get this coaching culture, then it's going to fix that, particularly if there's a toxic environment. The other thing that we can do, it hasn't come up specifically necessarily in terms of perhaps toxicity, in terms of that being that absolute or extreme, but more so about your question around blockages, for example. So with the 9 dimensions of coaching, we have sat down with clients and had some tricky conversations, and I'll role model one, which was about the chief exec. And she as in the client actually said, we're not going to get much change out of this chief exec in terms of coaching. That's our block. So blockage. So therefore what we could do is kind of the top down and bottom up approach. We knew you could do more of a bottom up approach. What can we provide for employees and teams that may or may not?
Yeah. Okay.
I think, Stuart makes a good point. The great thing about the Embark tool is that it allows you to enter the culture at any point in the business. So he's right. If you get a series of, if the diagnostic reveals that the senior team are the blocker, as he said, you can intervene elsewhere and almost create a gate of good or a fence of goodwill around them, such that they eventually come around to your way of thinking. So it does allow a coaching culture to develop even under hostile environments. And we say, Stuart says, we have seen that. You'll go in and say, what support have we got from the senior team? And they'll say X. Okay, well, in that case, what we need to do is intervene here, here, and here, and we'll need to bring them with us and let them find out at a later date. So almost like a cultural development through osmosis or something like that. Okay, right, good. That's it for questions, Stuart. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Feel free to email me or just stay tuned for next time, and we'll do we'll do another piece on that. So,
can you put your email in the chat, Stuart, once you stop talking? Very odd about the muting going on there. Not seen that before. It just sort of just didn't like you, did it?
No, it slowed me down and gave me a little break. Maybe it was just telling me to do that. Who knows?
I thought you were incredibly calm. It's very professional.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So that's the second and the third of our Embark tool. I think the social media links that Stuart shared there, we're keen on getting our associates promoting us out there. We've done quite a bit of work on search engine optimization, which is some magical wizardry that no one understands that happens on the internet. But it does mean that on a few searches, coaching related now on Google, we do appear at the top. But as I'm sure you'd imagine, it's a highly competitive market, and we're not aiming for those sort of, if you type executive coaching, we get to the top, but much more around organizational development, coaching cultures, and sort of some of the areas where there are still people searching, but we've got a better chance of doing it. But any work that you can do socially is great, and we're looking to improve that social aspect as we go through next year. Okay, right. So from one model to another, we're now moving on to Steve Thompson, our third program director. So of the program director special, Steve is going to spend some time talking to us about his 10 lives model. Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you very much, all, for joining the huddle today. As Stuart rather alluded to, I am Scottish, so if it all gets away from me and I get excited and start swearing or whatever, then just feel free to tell me to shut up. I'll introduce the 10 lives model. This came to me indirectly several years ago from a friend and colleague who is also a careers advisor in a secondary school. And it's a tool which has, I understand, been used fairly broadly in that environment of careers and careers advice. I've adapted it and I've used it for maybe 8-9 years now as a coaching tool. When you get, I'm sure you've all experienced this, you get into a coaching intervention and perhaps at the beginning or halfway through or even towards the end of the program, you suddenly are faced with this person who has an impasse. They have this, they're stuck. They're stuck. They don't know where they want to be. They don't really know what they want to achieve or where they want to go. And the conversation can then dry up. And it's all well and good being a skillful coach and asking challenging questions that draw out information. But sometimes you just need a shoehorn. Sometimes you just need something extra to get the conversation flowing. And I found that 10 Lives is an absolutely awesome tool to do just that. So what I would like to do is to get everybody to write down 10 lives. Now, I'll explain what this is because some people are very literal minded, some people are very flexible and very imaginative with this, and it doesn't really matter what you write down, but there are no rules. You can write down that a career or an individual, a film star, a celebrity, a historical figure, a thing. I've had a list of 10 lives which included a rock in a hot place and a tree and a beach. So you can be anything. The 10 lives are entirely coming from you. Don't think about it too much, but if you've got a pen and a paper with you at the moment, what I'd like you to do now, all of you, is to write down completely, if you like, liberally, without any forethought, 10 things you would like to be. 10 careers or 10 lives or 10 people or 10 things that you would like to be. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. I'm not going to give you much longer than 2 minutes because frankly, I don't want you to think about it. I just want you to pump out stuff. It doesn't have to be exactly 10, but head for 10. And I'll do the same because I've done this with my clients. Every time I've done it, bar maybe 2 or 3 times, I've actually done it for myself as well. And while the results that I find for myself are often consistent, sometimes something pops into my mind that is different, challenging, strange to me. So it's good to have a think about it yourself too when you're working with this. So just take a couple of minutes and we'll come back to the huddle and compare notes. Everyone's still very busy, so I'll just give you a few more seconds. Take another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll call a halt. It does, as I say, it doesn't need to be exactly 10. The more you have, the more the tool tends to work, but don't worry about it too much. Okay, everyone got a few things on their list, I hope. What I would like to do now is I want to take one person through the very start of the coaching conversation, and then I'd like to split into groups so you can discuss around your own lists and just establish some rules for yourself or some patterns for yourself, following on from what I do with whoever's going to volunteer. Can I get a volunteer for this? Who's got a decent list of weird things? Weird is good. Anyone going to stick their hand up here?
So if you want to volunteer, either unmute and say hello or put it in the chat. Somebody's got to do it.
Okay, Sarah, great, thank you. Do you want to unmute, Sarah? Great, so hi, good to see you. You in France?
Yeah.
Great, how's it going?
Yeah,
how's things? Good. Okay, so Sarah, if you can play the part of the coachee, I'll play the part of the coach. And what I would like to ask you, we'll assume that the introduction to the 10 lives is gone and you have your list there. I'd like you to read those things to me, Sarah, if you would, the things that you have written down there.
A philosophy teacher.
Yeah.
British Embassy support worker.
Yeah.
A PA.
Yeah.
Events manager.
Okay.
A lady of the manor.
Yeah.
A conference speaker.
Conference
Speaker.
Yeah.
A health visitor.
Yeah.
A movie director.
Okay.
And making music videos.
Great. Okay, so Sarah, given your list there, can you see any groups? Can you see anything where there are 3 or 4 or more roles that you've identified that are broadly similar?
Yep, so support worker, PA, and lady of the manor.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you tell me why lady of the manor and PA and support worker are similar?
Yeah, they're supportive roles.
Okay, so tell me about the lady of the manor. Who is the lady of the manor?
The lady of the manor comes from a time past.
Uh-huh.
And she organizes her cook and her chores, and she writes correspondence.
Okay, so tell me about the supporting role that she plays then.
So she's supporting the lord of the manor or the estate.
Good, okay. So does the idea of a supporting role appeal to you particularly?
Yeah.
What would be the ideal supporting role for you, do you think, Sarah? In real life?
The ideal supporting role for me would be organizing. I don't know what you're supporting somebody else to do their job well. Okay,
and what about the other aspects, the other elements that you put into your list there? Let's just draw a line under the support role thing for the moment, and we'll possibly come back to that. Have a look at the other things on your list and see if there's any other groupings, any other consistency that you can find there.
So, philosophy teacher, philosophy teacher, health visitor would be helping people to think.
Mm-hmm.
Events manager and movie director, they're creative.
Yeah.
making music videos. It's creative.
Right. So could you see an area perhaps in your future where you had a supporting role, encouraging or helping people or supporting people or somebody to fulfill their function in a creative way or in a creative industry?
I can't see it, but I get what you mean.
Okay. When you say you can't see it, tell me about that.
Tell you about that.
Tell me about what it is that you can't, that doesn't gel, that you can't actually imagine about perhaps working in a creative industry or working in a creative way to support people.
So I literally can't see it. In my head, I can see a blank stage.
Okay. Okay, Sarah, thanks very much indeed. So if I can come back to everybody now, what I would like to sort of point out there is that it gave us 3 or 4 different avenues to start exploring, which could just open up the conversation. So when you grind to a halt in a coaching intervention, this gives you a means to kind of get inside the head of the coachee a little bit and find out what it is that actually appeals to them or attracts them. For example, if I look down mine, I've got beachcomber and yachtsman, I've got stand-up comedian, I've got, there's a painter and a photographer in there. Solitary things, solo things, because that appeals to me. I like to be on my own quite a lot. It isn't what I do for a living. I'm the opposite. If anything, I'm quite gregarious and I work with people a lot. However, the idea appeals to me. So if somebody was to challenge me in that same context, I would possibly be looking for a means by which I could do the right thing or do the things that I want to do, but perhaps on my own or in an isolated situation. So what I'd like to suggest now, let's get any questions out of the way before we break into rooms. Has anybody got any queries or questions or observations about this tool? No?
Stuart, it's Peter. Just thinking in a career context, career guidance or career coaching, I've done a bit of. I guess, is it, maybe the question is it trying to sort of reach inside and discover the inner wishes and talents of somebody, latent or not, and but maybe hobbies potentially, like you could say music video was maybe a hobby stream, and I've got several like that, that they could try and combine with maybe their working head to be a career option for them, or at least a combination of career and work, career and pleasure.
Certainly, Peter, from the point of view of the careers advisor, from the original use of this tool.
Or career coach, yeah.
From the coaching side of things, how I'd like to think of it more is yes, getting inside, getting to the unconscious, getting to what makes people themselves, because I don't like this separation of work and life. I like to see everything brought together in holistic fashion. So getting into somebody's unconscious mind and getting them to throw out these imagination tools, these figments, these fractions, or these ideas, these notions, you get a clue immediately, especially if you lock into your own intuition. You get a clue about somebody's mindset by whether they are populating their list with jobs or roles, whether they're populating their list with fictional characters, historical feature characters, current characters. You know, somebody who wants to be a cast of current characters is going to give you a very different picture from somebody who has a bunch of inanimate objects in their list, for example. And you have to then be able to be intuitive and be prepared and be brave enough to ask, what is it about being a rock on a beach that appeals to you? What is it about being a tree in a forest that appeals to you? And then you can unlock their unconscious minds. Tree in a forest is one that has popped up a couple of times in conversations over the years. And people, when they think about it, think, well, I like to be the same as others. I like to be surrounded by people who are like me. I like to be in a group. I like to be in a club, a gang, or, you know. So it's it's about opening up the conversation in such a way that you're actually getting inside someone's head rather more than having them consciously think about where they want to go next, what their next step is. So why don't we, Louise, if we can we break up? What I'd like you to do is, in breakout rooms, just for 5 or 10 minutes, just have a discussion about your list and what you think your list means, and observe, reflect, feedback to each other, just a couple of minutes each, and see where you go with that. Is that okay with everyone? Cool. Off you go, Louise, if I can hand over to you.
Hello.
Hello, Simon. Hello.
Hi there.
Louise, great. Okay, so what I would say, Simon, why don't you go first? Tell us what's on your list, and then we'll feedback and ask questions. Eh?
Sure, yeah. So I've got various different things. So I've got Steve Jobs down here as the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting one. Reef diver.
Yeah.
An Arctic explorer. A fish swimming aimlessly around a reef. A mountaineer. Photographer. Yeah. I have got coach and disruptor down here as well.
Oh, good.
Which is good, seeing that's what I do.
Yeah.
Somebody who can have an impact on helping a better environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about total activists. I'm actually talking about enabling others to see some of the environmental challenges that we have.
Right.
And somebody who can inspire others to take different points of action. So I think that's about 9 people, 9 things going on there. So yeah, it's
great. So Louise, when you hear what Simon's put there, what does that immediately, what picture does that summon up for you? What is your impression?
Oh, you know, it's a really interesting picture. Really interesting.
That's really worrying.
No, it's interesting what the sort of things that you've just been talking about. And yeah, it seems to be kind of connected. There's a lot which is connected to the sea as well. I just wonder if there's any sort of connection there. I don't know, mix of things.
Sea references, aren't there?
Yeah. That's my immediate reaction anyway.
Yes. Okay. Simona, what's your observations? Did you catch that list? No. Okay. Can you unmute? Bottom left.
Yeah. So my technology is being a bit challenging, so it took me a while to come into the break.
Okay.
Out. So I just caught the end. So I'm just listening in on the observations. But thank you.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, Simon, my observation, the first thing that popped into my mind is a lot of individual roles, a lot of single person roles, if you like. Even if you're diving in a group around the reef, the fact is that you're very much isolated when you're underwater. Steve Jobs was on his own. He was up at the top of the tree. Arctic explorers, you see them perhaps as one of a group, but nonetheless, it's still I think a very closed off thing. Lots of single things. Does that really resonate with you? Do you like your own company?
Yeah, but that's not what I saw.
Okay.
Which I think is really interesting. So I do like my own company. I take a lot of solace from spending time with myself. But the thing that I see within all of these is actually about freedom.
Right.
It's actually about creation. It's about there's this link. It was interesting, Louise, that you picked up about the sea. Okay, because there is something that I love about water and the freedom of being close to water that it gives me. And the mountaineering thing is about actually, there's nothing better than being in the mountains if you're skiing or if you're walking or climbing, and just being able to take that sharp intake of really, really cold air. And that to me that invigorates about, that's what life's about, is being able to go and experience those sort of things. So I think part of this is about gaining control and doing the stuff that I want to be doing as part of my growth as a coach. it was interesting that the coach disruptor thing went down there, and actually I'm finding myself doing more disruption when I'm coaching, so helping people to see maybe different things which they hadn't thought of. So
Yeah.
I'm and this model I can see really fitting into that.
Yeah,
because it really does help provide it. And also in the group setting, what we're doing now,
yeah.
I can see that actually inviting other people to have observations, I think, can be really, really invigorating. It's such a bit. I haven't seen that.
Can I just make an observation that there's 3 or 4 things in there that I would consider to have an element of danger, personal danger and personal disruption involved.
Really?
The mountaineer, Arctic explorer, reef diver, these all have elements of risk involved.
Yeah, I think it's manageable risk.
It's manageable risk. Okay. Yeah. I just wondered if that risk was something that was actually quite attractive.
I think that whatever we do, whatever I do, there's an element of risk in whatever I do. And I think it's about managing that risk level.
Right.
So you, like me, I don't know much about your business, but in what you do, you've made a decision in essence not to work for a very large organization. And with that carries a certain level of risk. And what you've done is you've balanced that risk out and said, actually, I'm going to have a client base that I can work with, and therefore the financial risk is minimized. So if you take that into mountaineering sort of space, yeah, sure, it's going to be risky. You're not going to go Route 1 up any of the big walls in Europe or the Eiger or something like that without using some form of safety mechanism around you. You're not going to go up the north face of the Eiger without an ice axe and without ropes and without things to keep you warm.
Without getting my head,
it'd just be stupid.
Really first.
Yeah, so there's elements of risk around you, but
there's also that support network.
Let's mitigate it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's park that one. Simona, do you want to share your list with us, and perhaps I'll get Louise to feed that with you.
I think I ended up going down a slightly different path.
Fine.
Slightly. So because my list ended up being, well, I'll share my list. So my list was courageous, warm, abundant, renowned, expertise, loved, loving, healed, understanding, clear, succeeded, skilled, confident, and coaching clarity.
Cool. It's a really nice list. It's not something I've ever seen before, being so consistent. But Louise, what's your take on that?
Yes, that was a really, really nice list. It was kind of showed more your kind of feelings in a way. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what else to say, but it felt like it was from the heart, shall we say.
Right. Simon, what's your observation on that?
I think probably the main question, Simona, for me is, are these words of what you are right now?
No, actually, that's it was quite interesting because when Louise was saying about feeling as well, it was quite interesting because my brain took me to instantly thinking, actually, it would be great if I could move away from feeling. So that was what came up from Louise's, and then from yours, no, these are things that I want to happen rather than things that I am, or that I sense or feel that I am.
Okay.
So in coaching,
we go to a coaching session.
In a coaching environment, it would be interesting to know what you would ask somebody who presented with that list. What would you ask yourself, Simona, in that environment? If you were faced with somebody giving you that list over a conversation, what would you ask them?
Sorry, my brain went somewhere and then it went blank. Can you say that question again for me? Sorry, I suddenly went on to something that Simon was just saying. Yep, sorry.
So if you were coaching yourself, if you were coaching Simona who'd given you that list, what would you ask them about the list? What would you ask them about the emotions?
I don't know if I'd ask somebody else that, but I think I'd be, only because it's just a bit too close, but I think what's just come to mind then was something around, okay, how can we make that happen? but I know that I've asked myself that question before and I don't know the answers to it. So I was conflicted then about that's probably what I'd want to ask, but I'm not sure that if I was being coached with that question, how effective it would be. So there was a bit of a conflict in myself in that one.
Right. So Simon, what would your question be?
I'd probably look at the list here, read them back to you, and ask about which words, when I'm reading back to you, are you attracted to? Because what that would do is sort of move them a bit towards a hierarchy, and from that say, okay, so if we move ourselves forward 12 months, so it's a bit of perceptual positioning work. If we move ourselves forward 12 months and we consider that we are achieving these particular words, so I'm in a courageous space, for example, how does that make you feel? And I'd go down the feelings route and then move them back into, so you're in this space now, what messages are you going to give to yourself to get to this space? So it's a bit of timeline type stuff going on.
Yeah.
And
guys,
I'm
very conscious that we're running tight on time, and some people may have an issue with that. Can we close it off there? Thank you very much indeed for your participation. We'll go back to the main body of the curriculum.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Really odd.
That is a bit frustrating. So, they're all coming back now. But did you catch any of the 9 lives aspect?
I got to the point where we were writing down our list, and then a few minutes after that, and then it was in and out, and then I didn't hear anything, disappeared.
Right. Okay. Well, it might be worth you watching back on the recording, because what Ben does is just explain a little bit how it works. But I think you know how to coach. You understand the concept just from the list about how it might work, and so I think what Steve explains a little bit on that. Anyway, well, I'll let Steve close off, because some of us are back. I'll assume we're all, and then we'll go from there.
Whoops.
I've done it.
You've done it.
Yeah.
I hope that started to get your minds going on a different track for those occasions when things do get a bit stuck, when you do get into a position where there's perhaps a block in the conversation. It doesn't happen often. It doesn't, and a skilled coach will always be able to open people up. But I just find this a really useful tool for starting conversations when they have stalled, when somebody's reached an impasse, when somebody has perhaps walked themselves into a cul-de-sac conversationally, and this allows for a different set of conversations to start happening. It was very interesting talking to Simona and Simon. And Louise, I'm sorry we didn't get to your list, but we will do. You and I can sit down and do 10 lives in this time. But I hope it was, if not the first thing that you'd reach for in your tool bag, at least entertaining and possibly just something to get you thinking and open up a new avenue for thinking about your own coaching process.
Great, thank you, Steve. And I mean, new tools are always good. I don't coach that much, but when I do, it's always nice to have something to bring to the table that brings a new dimension to it. And although a simple tool, it's one of those ones you can sort of pull out the back of your mind in an emergency when you really have run out of road, and keep that professionalism going and keep the conversation going rather than having to wrap it up. So thank you very much for that, Steve. Thank you for all my contributors today, Steve, Omar and Stuart. And next time we meet, December the 17th, December the 19th it is, for the next huddle. We've got Sarah coming to talk to us about clean language. Looking forward to that. And it's good to see you on today's huddle as well, Sarah. So we're looking forward to hearing about your understanding of clean language. It's a subject I said earlier we all know about, but we can always learn more, and it never does any harm to have a refresh. So I'm looking forward to that. Once again, let me know, or one of us know, if you are interested in the supervision. I've had a couple of people comment already, so thank you for that on the chat. And if the supervision of interest to you, then we can get that forward to you. Simon wants to know if we're having a glass of virtual mulled wine on December the 19th. So how about this, Sarah, if you don't mind, we'll all bring something with us to drink at the next huddle, and you'll just have to manage us as we descend. Depending on what you drink, if you bring non-alcoholic beer, that's fine. But bring a tipple of your choice. We'll have our own online Christmas party. And in fact, we are, so some of the program directors are getting together in December. We're having a Christmas party in Swansea. So Stuart's dad and sister run an outdoor leisure centre in Cardiff. And so we're going there. They've got cottages. We're staying there. We're bringing families, and we're having a Mexican night. It's going to be brilliant. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to Sarah next week. Thank you very much for all of you attending. And if you've got any questions or want to talk to us about anything, that's what we're here for. Thank you very much. Goodbye.